Let's get philosophical, shall we? In Albert Camus' essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, he poses the ultimate philosophical question, and that is, why bother living if life is so absurd and meaningless? What's the point to any of it, and why not just not live? But he's not asking everybody to denounce life and end it. What he's doing is he's pointing out that the very contrast of that is what is the ultimate power for everybody. It's to defy the odds and live anyways within the absurd chaos of the universe. And then what he points to in The Myth of Sisyphus, the very title of the essay, is the story of Sisyphus. In Greek mythology, Sisyphus was the king of Ephyra, the city, Corinth maybe, I think they call it. And Sisyphus, being a powerful king, does everything he can to defy the odds and to trick the gods into more life. And ultimately what happens is he lies to the gods over and over again, and eventually they catch up with him and they punish him to this absolutely insane task of forever having to roll a boulder up a hill, only to have the boulder roll down the hill and he has to do it all over again. And so he says that you can imagine Sisyphus, even though he's damned to this eternal task, eventually is found smiling when the boulder rolls down the hill and he knows that he has to go down. And what he does in defiance of this eternal damnation is he goes down the hill, grabs the boulder, smiles and carries on with his task, even though he knows he'll never complete it. Even though he knows that every time he reaches the top, the boulder's going to go back down to the bottom and he's going to have to start over again. And so he really points out right to our faces that the absurdity of life is the very reason that you must persist. That even though it's chaotic and it doesn't seem to have any meaning, and life is, and when I say life, I'm talking about the entire infinity of the cosmos, that it's insane and absurd to look at our lives and recognize that we're not even a speck, we're essentially nothing in the grand scheme of the infinity. But to persist at all odds is how you win. To face the insanity of life, give it the middle finger and carry on is how you win. Just like Sisyphus with his impossible task, a task that is never completed, a task that upon completion has to be done all over again. So, what it reveals about life, especially philosophically, is that we're meaning makers and we're storytellers. And though, if you look out at the vastness of the world, or even worse, the insane size of the cosmos, you can feel tiny and worthless, and that's the point. The point is to rebel against that. The point is to overcome that existential crisis that life is finite. And even though it's finite, it's to live within that finitude and do your best and say fuck you to death. And laugh at how insane it is to believe that we have but one life. And though it's insane and difficult and challenging, and we're like Sisyphus constantly rolling a boulder up only to have it roll back down, you smile at that. You smile at the challenge of life, and that's how you win life. So when Camus poses the ultimate question of why not just take your own life and end it all if things are meaningless and pointless, he is not saying to throw your life away. On the contrary, what he is saying is that this is how you defy that chaos and that meaninglessness, is that with every fiber of your existence, you live in the face of the odds that are stacked against you. And you do everything in your power in life to keep rolling a boulder up a hill that you know will always win. You know the boulder's gonna go back down to the bottom, and instead of giving up, instead of quitting, even though you know you will lose, you fight on anyways. And you do it with a little smirk and a little smile. So when we look at our lives, we can look at this essay. It's one of the, for me, it's one of the most beautiful existential philosophical essays I've ever read. And sometimes I actually had to read it twice in order to fully comprehend what it meant. And then when it clicked, it was like, that is why that story persists through time. Because Sisyphus was damned by the gods for trying to have more life. And in order to defy the gods, even though he was damned to an eternity of hell, he smiled at the torture he was offered. And he carried on knowing that he would have to endure a never-ending task. And that is the ultimate definition of our life. It's the ultimate definition of how we live. It doesn't matter if you believe in God, it doesn't matter what your faith or your spirituality is. We all know that it is insane to believe in our life as just a speck of nothing. And so the ultimate defiance is living anyways, even though it's insane. And I hope you can take that and look at your own life and see how wild it is to look up into infinity, smile at your fate, and say, I will endure no matter what. And maybe do it with a little smirk. Cheers.